think we've got everyone in. Well, anyways, welcome everyone to our Women's Travel Safety webinar. My name is Carolyn Ray. If we haven't met, I'm the CEO of JourneyWoman, and I am really happy to have you here with us today for the next 60 minutes to 90 minutes. As you know, women's travel safety is a topic near and dear to our hearts here at JourneyWoman. When Evelyn Hannon started writing about women's solo travel 30 years ago, it was one of the things that really helped the travel industry understand what makes women's travel
Abby, you have to
different.
lower. I can't hear mine.
In fact, Evelyn wrote the Government of Canada's very first women's travel booklet. It was actually a booklet then, but that booklet is still on the website today. You can download it, and it's also online. There's so much impacting women's travel safety today. There's technology, there's AI, there's government cutbacks. And so we've been kind of asking ourselves, is the world getting safer or not? What is clear is that we need to be more informed, more aware, and that we can't always rely on business and government to protect us, unfortunately. So I'm very, very happy to have three experts in the field of AI, security, and just good old data with us today, who I'll introduce in just a moment. And what you're going to learn today is, first of all, what are the risks to your personal and online safety? What steps can you take to proactively protect yourself? And how can you advocate for change? We are trying something new today and broadcasting this live on our YouTube channel. So if you're watching on that channel, please be cautious with what personal information you share, as it is a public forum. But you can post questions and they will get to me so that we can ask our speakers. And we'll also be sending you additional information and this recording after the session, so don't worry about any of that. And we are adding on a little extra time at the end to allow for questions. So please keep track of them or put them in the chat, and we will do our best to answer them at the end. Again, our goal is to empower you, to help you feel more confident, and to give you some tools to adapt to a lot of change. So on to our speakers. I've asked each of our speakers to introduce themselves and share their expertise in women's safety. And we're going to start with Tracey Breeden.
Thanks, Carolyn, and thanks for having me on this webinar and all the great work that you do for JourneyWoman. So it's an honor for me to be also a member of your advisory committee in the past. But my name is Tracey Breeden. I'm a keynote speaker, and I'm an in real life, as they call it, an IRL expert in tech and digital safety expert who bridges three worlds that don't usually talk to each other. So I spent 14 years in law enforcement investigating sexual and domestic violence and other forms of abuse. And then I spent 6.5 years leading safety at Fortune 500 tech companies, like the head of women's safety at Uber. I was also the vice president and head of safety at Match Group, which is the parent company of Tinder and dating apps like Hinge. I've also advised governments, including the UK Parliament, the European Commission, and the White House Task Force on Digital Safety Legislation. Today, I do keynotes. I advise companies, do keynotes on digital safety, women's safety, tech-facilitated abuse, AI safety, also responsible innovation, which continues to be a top topic and should be. I speak on the intersection also of safety and bringing my perspective from being a member of the LGBTQ+ community and as a woman. And what makes my perspective unique is that I've lived all three of these sides and all three of these worlds. I've investigated the crimes, I've built the prevention systems at scale, and I've helped shape the legislations that govern them. So I am excited to be here to help also provide tips and information that I can help on this webinar.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to now ask Paige Hanson. Paige is our cybersecurity expert, and both of you have been with us on webinars before, so thank you for coming again.
Yes, Carolyn, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be with you and everybody on the panel. So thank you. I am Paige Hanson. I have been in the field of cybersecurity. I've stumbled upon it 20 years ago, almost now, and have really dove into the education and building programs around educating law enforcement, consumers, victim advocates, military, and businesses. And so today I have my own company. It's called Secure Labs, where you think about your data and where it goes when you trust a company to have it. We help them build a foundation in protecting that data. So it's really important to me that these small businesses get the same resources as larger enterprise companies. And then from a consumer standpoint, I speak nationally and I have been for almost now 20 years. And I love whether it's digitally or in person, but spreading the word about tips and tricks to help protect your identity, things, little small things you can do, and then of course the awareness. Awareness is key, and that's something I really love to do is speak at all sorts of events, whether they're business events, church events, etc., just to get the good news, the good word out.
Thank you. Thank you, Paige, for being here. Paige also has done our cybersecurity course, so we'll send that out to you afterwards, but it's a really great 20-minute or so tips and tricks from Paige about how to stay safe online. And our last speaker is Eva Ruska from Riskline. And I talked about data at the beginning. Well, this is Eva's job. So we're very happy to have you here, Eva. And Riskline probably isn't a company people know, but maybe you could explain what role you play in the travel industry.
Sure. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for the invitation. And I'm so happy to be with all of you here today. So I'm Eva Ruska. I am Riskline's Americas Operations Manager, based in Mexico City. I'm originally from Finland, but been living in Mexico for several years now. So at Riskline, I lead a regional team of analysts. We have analysts located across the globe in 4 different teams. There are 3 regional teams and then 1 cross-regional team. And what we do, well, we do provide political security and travel intelligence worldwide. So our analysts, as I mentioned, they are across the globe in over 15 countries. We provide human verified information gathered with open source intelligence tools. And we provide this intelligence monitoring and investigating incidents 24/7. Our work never stops, so it's 365 days a year. And we investigate over 220 countries and territories, as well as 260 plus cities. And yeah, our analysts review and verify intelligence from hundreds of thousands of sources on a daily basis. And then we filter out the noise because, it's a lot of information. And we report on the critical information on breaking incidents as well as developing crises. So we have a great team of analysts and who use their expertise to verify and contextualize the data. We calculate risk levels based on internationally recognized risk management best practices. And then we deliver the intelligence in useful, personalized formats through seamless APIs or embeddable widgets. Our main bulk of work, what we provide, it's alerts. So these real-time alerts, which are over 38,000 that we sent in the past 12 months only. And we also provide in-depth destination risk assessments, travel entry requirements, forecast articles, and more. And the organizations we work with, they are of all sizes, so from startups to enterprise corporations. And many of our clients are providers who package our data with other services for their own customers. So our intelligence at Riskline helps companies to mitigate risk, drive business decisions, and empower traveler safety.
And one of the companies that you provide data to is the TripIt app, right?
That's right. That's correct. Yes, that's
Yeah,
one of
so
our.
that's something that our travelers might know is TripIt, where you can get alerts on everything from wildfires to pilot strikes to anything at all,
really,
actually.
anything at
Yeah,
all
so
that might disrupt travel. That is our core business.
amazing. Well, thank you for being here. I want to start off by asking our experts, when we think about women's safety right now, we often default to physical safety, but how would you all describe, the state of things right now when we think of women's safety?
I think for me, Carolyn, I can jump in, is that, women's safety today encompasses any space women exist. So it's not just physical safety. It's not just in physical spaces. It's in digital spaces. And it's in that also that blurred line and that blurred space between those two. So I think when I think about it, women's safety no longer is about physical protection in a physical space. It's about ensuring women can exist. They can exist fully. They can exist authentically. They can exist safely in every space in which they occupy. And that means whether it's a city street, whether it's a dating app, whether it's the back of a rideshare vehicle, whether it's the workplace, whether it's a social media platform, or whether it's in their home. So the definition for me of women's safety in this day and time is expanded. It's very expansive. And so people still tend to lean towards thinking about physical protection, but it goes much further and beyond that into that digital space as well. And that is where we're spending a lot of our time. And that's actually, we're spending, I think, what is it, 6 to 8 hours a day now in those digital spaces. So it's important. And a lot of people, a lot of governments, a lot of the public still doesn't see digital harm at the same level as physical harm. But it is harmful, and digital harm sometimes, and a lot of times, leads to some kind of physical harm or physical danger.
And to add on to that with the digital safety, and that's why we have to make sure that we're talking about what you can do and empower people to use technology safely and confidently. I think a lot of presentations or even news articles you read out there are talking it's fear-based and don't do this, don't do that. But there is a way to engage using a digital safety or your digital technology safely and more securely. And that's what I love.
Whoops.
You lost your ear. Can't hear you.
Whoop. Sorry, Paige.
Carolyn, you muted me. Okay,
I
I get
accidentally,
I
sorry.
get it. I get it. No,
I've already
I'm not
screwed
sure
up.
where
Okay.
I left off, but essentially just making sure conversations like this are extremely important because we are talking about empowering people to use technology and then to be more safe, whether it's you call it cyber safety or digital safety, but not to be scared of the technology and figure out how do we incorporate it into our daily lives and not have to then worry about some of the things that might be so fear-based out there.
Yeah, agree. Eva, what are your thoughts? I mean, do you think the world, you've got all the data at your fingertips, do you think the world is getting safer? Is it just our mindset? What's happening?
Yeah, it's definitely, if we talk about the women's safety, it's very broad concept as my colleagues mentioned here. It's typically what we think about the freedom of violence, coercion, and discrimination, but in every aspect of life. As you mentioned, the digital domain is really there now. So a lot of this harassment is online. A lot of the things women experience on safety matters. It's online. It's there, and there are things we can do about it. And from RiskLine's perspective, as we provide information for travelers who actually travel to locations across the globe, so women do continuously have these issues about gender-based violence and harassment, particularly prevalent in certain destinations. So not everywhere in the world, but some destinations. And what we can do, well, we need to research before traveling. We need to get information before going to the site to know what to expect.
Yeah, so just carrying on that thought, there's a lot of, as you said, misinformation about, let's talk about destinations, for example. What do you see as the biggest risks right now when it comes to travel in particular?
So the biggest risks for travel obviously are there are a lot of conflicts ongoing in the world at the moment. So not just for women, but for any traveler. So these conflict situations, such as the Russia-Ukraine war or the situation in the Middle East with Israel, Gaza, it has impact on travelers, even though they wouldn't be going on to those locations. So a lot of flights have been diverted, rerouted, cancelled, and there have been impact on a vast number of travelers due to those conflicts. Then besides that conflict situations, we do have a lot of crime situations in different countries. So South and Central America, parts of Mexico, obviously. There are areas that you do need to investigate a bit before going to those areas to know what to expect, to be prepared, and be able to travel to those locations.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we face as travelers is we often see a headline that is perhaps unrepresentative and creates fear and creates anxiety. And so what we often do is we ask each other, have you been there? What was it like? What was, and get advice and tips from women who have actually been on the ground. And knowing that a lot of these headlines are engineered to make you click and to make you open an article. What's your advice on, how do you know? How do you know what's true?
That's a very good question. So
it's the question. Okay.
Today's world, there is so much disinformation online going on everywhere. So it's really hard to say really what is the truth, what is real information. What we do advise our clients, our travelers is to look on those governmental authority sites of information and guidelines from different governments before traveling. But as you mentioned, these women travelers forums, travelers forums in general, they do have the on-the-ground information. So you can have really like localized information from those forums. And it is valid information. And I think it's really trusted information nowadays.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue into trust and just talking a little bit about who do we trust. We did a survey recently with some of our readers and asking about travel safety, asking about trust. And one of the things that came out in that is the trust that I was very happy to see in women's travel websites. So women that are actually out there writing. And I think it's a question we can ask ourselves when we're reading a news headline is the person who wrote that article actually been to that place? Or is it just somebody who is collating information perhaps, or using AI to collate information? But I want to ask you all, when you think of who you trust, how do you determine that for yourselves, and what kind of information or criteria do you consider when you're making decisions about safety?
Well, for me, with the age of AI, and I know that's such a term that is talked about, and it's so broad, but when it comes to trust, for me, now more than ever, I have to verify and then trust. Or you hear a similar sentiment flipped where you're trust but verify. It's the same sort of deal where you can no longer just see an image, see a news article, see a video and say, well, that's real, because AI generation tools are readily available at no cost. There are ways that, I even downloaded one yesterday, uploaded my voice, and created something within, minutes. And so it was so easy. So for me, I have to verify. Sometimes what I do is what's called OSINT. It's open source intelligence. You use the internet to do some additional searching. So instead of just taking one image or one article for what it says, do a couple other searches. What else comes up in your search about that same topic? There's something called a reverse image search. you can actually go to Google, upload the image, and you could see, are other people using a image or similar image? It does take maybe a little extra time, so it's not necessarily super convenient if you're looking for fast news or a fast way to evaluate, but it does give me more of a peace of mind because I've double checked the sources. Like Eva has said, you're going to the official .gov, .org type websites. But I'm not just taking something that I see and just automatically assuming it's real. I do have to have extra steps in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Tracey, what about things like ride sharing? And maybe you could share a little bit about what you've been talking about recently in the New York Times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've talked a lot about accountability. So it's one thing for, there's ways for us to try to verify information the best we can, whether it's, what Paige talked about, or even beyond that, utilizing women's communities and women's groups or independent advocates and experts. But a lot of people we see trust decreasing in companies and government and others, and there's reasons for that. So you think about, well, how do we bring that trust back? How can we trust organizations? Well, first and foremost, it comes down to accountability and transparency. And what I can tell you is in the digital space and digital safety world where these companies exist, they aren't regulated hardly at all. There are some regulations that have rolled out, but those regulations highly are focused on children, which is a good thing. But there's a lack of regulations. There's a lack of understanding of how to regulate these companies. And then there's also just a lot of corruption. So we know that exists as well. Do they want to, they're spending a lot of money to not be regulated. They have teams and they invest a tremendous amount of money to not be regulated or to have regulations in place that work for them. And so, I'm really, really pushing for more accountability. And through regulations, I believe that in order to hold these organizations, these tech companies, and the companies who are creating AI, whether it's rideshare safety, whether it's dating apps, whether it's social media, no matter where it lives in that digital space, and there needs to be accountability there. And so I'm really trying to help educate people on the need for regulations and how they can, push for regulations. We see a lot of conversations around that. And I think it does matter. It does matter to communicate with your representatives, no matter what country you're in, no matter what channel that is. You look at Canada, a lot of the provinces will set regulations around for rideshare safety. When you think about the United States, you not only have regulations that we could potentially have at the federal level, but state, you can reach out to your attorney general, you can reach out to your representatives in those specific states to really push for more regulations in this space. But I believe that they are not going to do it on their own. I've worked in those companies. I've interacted and engaged with many of the leading social media companies out there. They're not going to do it without also regulations on board in the way that it needs to be done to really create safety for the people who are using these platforms and engage. And we all are. We all are in these digital spaces. It doesn't matter who we are. So that's a little bit of what just really saying, and pushing for more accountability. Because there's also all of this data that exists within these organizations, and there's so much data that they have on us, on behavior, on harassment, on assault, on all of the harms that happen out there. They have a lot of data that because they're living in this digital space that they can share and be more transparent about. They understand a lot of the trends around harm. And the more that they are transparent around that creates more safety for us. It also creates loyalty in their consumers. But we really have to work to get more transparency. And that's not just having the data out there, because what are we going to do with those numbers? When we see those numbers, we don't know exactly what to do with those numbers. So in order for us to be able to create safety, whether it's law enforcement, government, public, communities, we have to understand the trends connected to that harm that is happening. And we need companies to be transparent around the trends of that harm. And regulations is one way to do that. and not just it's on us to share what we see or what we find out around a trend connected to that harm. And holding, especially with AI on board now, there's really a need for regulations even more than before to really hold companies responsible and to make sure that they're taking ethical measures and what they're doing and how they're designing their products and how they're responding to harm that happens.
Sorry, Carolyn, I know you're moderating this, but I have a follow-up question to Tracey. So am I hearing you right to say that companies likely understand what harm and vulnerabilities there are in the app or the technology that they have, but until there's regulations that actually make them do or incorporate the change, that they're not going to do it?
I don't believe they will do it
Okay.
the way that it should be done. Now, I'm
Right.
not saying that they're not doing anything, but I'm saying
Mhm.
that they're not doing enough and that they're aware of harms and information that can be very helpful to the public. Can be
Right.
really helpful to all organizations, whether it's government, law enforcement, and just the public in general. But yes, I do believe that without regulations, they're not going to be fully transparent about what is happening, what they know, how that could be potentially prevented. And we're just going to get bits and pieces of that. And we've seen that. We've seen that
Right.
publicly come out with Facebook and others.
Tracey, could you highlight just for 1 second what you were interviewed by the New York Times about, just to bring, because people may not be aware of one of the examples of this.
Yeah, well, I was recently in the New York Times. You can find that article was late August, where the New York Times revealed the number of sexual assaults and abuse from documents that they had received from what they had received, and just speaking to the article. And I would just encourage everyone to go read the article in the New York Times, because it does provide a lot of information that the New York Times was able to receive on the number of sexual assaults that are happening connected to rideshare platforms. So as we call it, tech facilitated abuse that's happening on that platform. And they came to me. I, of course, was the former head of women's safety at Uber, to kind of give my opinion on or my thoughts around what should be done in these spaces. And one, I stand very firmly on, if companies are aware of trends of harm, that whether it's it's not saying that they're causing it necessarily, but maybe they become aware of that trend of harm, that they have a responsibility to talk about that trend of harm publicly with the people who are utilizing their platforms. And so I talked a little bit about responsibility and accountability and what that looks like in the rideshare space. And I do believe that the rideshare industry needs to be more transparent around the trends of harm that they're seeing. And then the regulatory discussion as well, is that I do believe that rideshare companies and other digital safety, digital type online platforms do need to be regulated. And that's something I think that is absolutely necessary, and it kind of highlights that. So I encourage everyone to read the article. It talks about the need for transparency, what's actually happening. It talks about some of the stories of victims and survivors who have been impacted. And even though I can't go into a lot of detail about it, I think it's really important for people to read that. And it does talk a little bit about the actions that the public can take. I think for me, it was getting that trend out around, I'll talk just a little bit about the trends. So trends around rideshare is, I encourage people, if you're in a vulnerable state, you're using rideshare at night, the data shows you're more likely to be assaulted in those cases. And I don't say that to cause fear. It's information to help inform people. So my teaching and my sharing of wisdom is, don't ride in a rideshare alone at night. If you're in a vulnerable state, if you've been drinking, make sure you stay together, make sure you go together. So there's trends like that the public isn't always aware of. I recently put out a tip around your safety features in your Uber app are not automatically on. And you have to go into the settings, you have to go into safety in your settings, you have to toggle them on. So a lot of those safety features are not even on, and people just think they're automatic, and they're not. So it's a little bit of just, I'm trying to get more information out around that as well. But I encourage everybody to read the article in the New York Times.
Great. Thank you very much. And we do have those tips on our website if you haven't seen them. Very good tips. Actually, I learned a lot just from talking to you about that. I want to move on to cybersecurity and talk a little bit about what's happening. And I guess I know we want to talk about AI too. I don't know if there's two interconnected here to exclude one from the other, but Paige, what are you seeing in cybersecurity? We know, all kinds of scams, frauds. What's kind of happening in your world?
In my world, I'm seeing more and more voice cloning scams. And it's the fear-based calls that you get, and it's stating that someone is in trouble, or it may sound just like them. And I'm seeing just more and more people become victim of these scams. And you would think, oh, vulnerable, maybe older adults would be more vulnerable to this. Studies actually show it's the younger Gen Z population, because they have more videos online that you are able to easily scrape with AI tools and then duplicate events or the voice. And so it doesn't actually the data shows that it's the spectrum. So it's people maybe younger and older adults, everyone is falling victim to this, because we hear the person on the other end of the call and we immediately think that is actually them. And the fraudsters know enough, because you've posted enough about your day and your life and what that entails, that they can have believable points or checks that you would normally think, oh, a fraudster wouldn't know that. Well, you posted it online, they know what school. And so for me, just the AI cloning, and then the defense for that would be, and maybe you've heard this, but the code word or weird question, obscure question you would ask the person, you just can't automatically say, oh my gosh, I'm going to hang up the phone and now go to the grocery store and get the gift card. It's a code word. What did we talk about at dinner last night? What is the code word? If they don't pass that check, then hang up. It is a scam.
Wow, that's scary. So anytime we're posting a video online, like even this,
Well, see,
right?
and here's where I know in my world, I mean, I have a YouTube channel and I do webinars, these sort of things. I am assessing my risk. I understand that my voice has been out there for years and years, and I have a higher risk. That is something that I have decided, me personally. But what about your kids? They didn't get to decide this. You posted videos online of them. You posted, all this information, family members who aren't on social media or Facebook. So that's where we have to also be just aware of who we are including in these videos. And if they didn't give consent for that, then it's probably not great to have them start a digital footprint that they have no consent over.
Yeah, I had this discussion with my daughter a few weeks ago. So she encouraged me to make my Instagram private, but I'm not sure if that doesn't mean like still because you can search Instagram now on Google. Are those things still lying around? Videos?
Well, they possibly could be, but because you have now put I mean, there's some sort of service that could have indexed what was public at one time, but they won't get any additional updates. It's highly unlikely that that stuff would be public, but there are services and that index. What I mean by that is scrape everything off that's public and then put it for their own use that's not public. So yes, there is a possibility, but because you've now changed the setting, that is a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, I do wonder if all of this is really, increasing the trend of people getting off social media. And I mean, definitely thinking differently about what you're putting out there. I think we have to protect ourselves, but also, what does this mean over the long term for all these social platforms if we're starting to kind of, reduce our number of followers, put things on private,
Yeah, and I think when social media first came out, you don't know what the evolution of it, you don't know what you don't know. So you posted it because you were wanting to share and connect with people. But then you realize that what the oversharing actually does and can potentially the vulnerabilities. And so you have people that have now learned this, do not want to assume or accept that risk, and now are changing their behavior or habits because of that. I know, Eva, you probably have data to back all of that up, but just with time in a about social media comes learnings, and this learning and this data helps us decide what we want to do as individuals and then as a family.
Yeah, definitely right. I mean, all of this talking about how cybersecurity can affect women travelers. Well, it does. I mean, besides these threats, I mean, you can do something about them. I mean, you can respond as a traveler. You can delay social media posts that you are posting during your travels, not do them immediately. I mean, there is a risk involved in posting your life in real time to masses of people. And that's one thing you can do. There are other things like turning off geotags or live check-ins. You can also avoid sharing too much information with strangers, even other tourists or travelers. So not sharing your room numbers or routes or travel plans. That is the way to protect yourself when traveling. As well as using VPNs. So using a VPN network when accessing public Wi-Fi. That is also a way to protect yourself from cybersecurity scams.
Yeah,
it's funny you say, Eva, about the posting in real time, delaying it. I actually have a friend who's going on a long business trip, and right before this session, she texted me and said, "Hey, I want to connect with you. I want to post about what my experiences are, but I also know the content and what you say, which is pause, wait till you get back." But she has a very long trip. So it's like, how do I incorporate some posting without revealing too much information? I think definitely delaying the post is great. But, if there is ways that you can post where you're not giving, maybe it's a week later after you've left a location versus, you have to wait till the end of your month-long trip or whatever the time may be. But that is a very real thing. You're so excited about that. You have things to share with your followers or your network, and it's just you have to assess your risk.
That's absolutely right. Yes.
I always am very cautious. I try to post after I've left a place, but also not saying where I am staying in a hotel. I know people love to put up hotel pictures, and I'm at this hotel and I think that's definitely, for me, that's way too much info. Like, I don't want anyone knowing where I am in that moment. So you're right. You can control when you post, what you post. I mean, the world is not waiting with bated breath to see where I am. I'm pretty sure that is not the case. So they can wait a couple days until I get back. But yeah, this does call for more caution all around, I think. I want to move on to AI and artificial intelligence. And our survey that we just did a few weeks ago showed that 75% of our readers do not trust AI. There's a little bit of, and many said they were not using it. I think we probably are using AI without knowing we're using AI. Sometimes, even if you look at Google and you do a search in Google, you're getting an AI overview, which is very often not correct. And so that's kind of using AI without using AI. How do you all think AI is developing, and what kinds of things should we be thinking about if we're using it to create itineraries or what have you?
I'll say that it's interesting because I talk to people too, and they're like, yeah, I don't use AI, or I do use it, but they're thinking about the proactive piece of it. They don't think, and I tell people that, AI is already in your life. It is in, every time you book a flight, if you're traveling, they're using pricing algorithms with AI. Rideshare apps are using AI to match you with drivers and routing and surge pricing, and dating apps are using it. And so it's, hotel bookings are using it. So we're now seeing it even using our phone. I mean, the new, your Apple phone has AI integrated into it. So I think it's interesting that people don't realize how much AI has actually infiltrated their lives without knowing about it. And so I think it's important to first and foremost understand that AI is weaved into much of what we're doing, whether we're using these social platforms or, we're searching Google now. Google's using AI to rank the results. So it's there. And I think the thing that people need to also, we know some of the negatives right around AI with bias, and we can talk a lot about the negatives and how harmful it can be. But we have to kind of understand that it's already weaved into our lives. So we're a little few steps behind in how now do we make sure that women's safety is prioritized and the things that we think need to be prioritized are prioritized in that space. But the first step is understanding that you may not think you're using AI. You may say that you don't trust it, but we're using it. And it's weaved into everything just about that we're doing.
I have to agree. I mean, it's everywhere now. You can't really be online without using AI anymore. And so people do use it, not proactively, as you mentioned, Tracey. But yeah, there are threats related to AI and women travelers. So one of the most significant is related to its effects on personal safety. There are these deep fakes, for example, these AI-generated manipulated media. It can be videos, images, audio, as Paige mentioned already. These carry the potential for privacy violations, reputational harm, political manipulation even, and emotional distress, obviously. And I just have to mention, like, a couple of years ago, I was in India traveling, and I was looking for a hotel in the next town we were going. And, the reviews, I noticed they were all the same. I mean, word by word, same text, 5-star reviews. That should ring a bell. I mean, it's bot. It's not a human giving the review there. So you can see signs somewhere and you need to react. I mean, you have to verify information, as was talked before. You have to check another page to see if the same reviews are on the other hotel reservation page as well. There are things that you can react to. And yeah, what can we do then as travelers? Well, or persons anywhere. I mean, you not need to be even a traveler to use this AI online. Well, first of all, install anti-malware softwares and update your softwares. Use firewalls and have strong passwords. Those are some of the things I would say here.
I'm looking at Paige because I know we've talked about this before.
We have.
Don't use your birthday as your password.
You don't use your dog's name for your password. Exactly. But on the point, just to also agree with Tracey and Eva about AI, while yes, you are likely using it without knowing, if you've ever used your maps or your email filters in your inbox, okay, those are AI for good. But if you do choose to use the tools or experiment with them, make sure you're aware of the data that you're putting into the system. So if you're composing an email or have maybe your company data and you want to, rearrange a spreadsheet, you have to redact that information because you're feeding all of the AI model all of this information. So if you don't want your address into the AI model, don't put your address in the AI model when you copy and paste the letter that you're putting together. So I always find it best to, would you post whatever you're putting in this AI chatbot online for anybody to see? If the answer is no, then redact that, go about your day, and then you're the human in the loop. So if you've ever heard the term human in the loop, you may get data or you may get an output that gives you some stat or a recommendation for travel, but you do have to be the human in the loop to verify that it's actually legitimate.
Yeah. Could you talk, Paige, I know people might have a question about how do you redact this information? Could you, and because we know AI is learning from us, it's basically sucking in everything and it's learning. And could you explain how you can shut that off?
Yes. So when I guess in simple terms, if I was writing a letter and it had the address and a full name and locations and things like that, I would just not include that in what I pasted into the AI. So I would just delete those things. And I usually put brackets and I'll say name and then, comma, location. So it's not trying to come up with a location that for me. So I just put a placeholder in those places. So it takes an extra moment because I'm redacting some of that. But for me, I found it's worked the best because I'm reading exactly what I'm writing, and then redacting exactly what I want to take out. And then I get the output pasted into, what email or document that I'm working, and then replace the names and the addresses that with the output that I get.
But you can also turn off the learning capability
Yes, that is
as
a
well, right?
setting. So let's use ChatGPT. It is a setting to turn off the learning. Listen, you just have to trust that it is doing that. I don't believe it for a second, but it may not store it the way it does, publicly accessible to anybody. But I would still be cautious, even if you have that setting
Yeah.
turned off.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Don't always believe the button.
and I agree with Paige, don't trust it. But I think the other piece about turning off the learning, the only thing that I would reconsider about leaving the learning on is think about who's teaching AI right now. 80%, what is it? 80% is like men who are designing and a lot of the information that's going into the design, and choosing what information goes in there. So think about it like AI is learning from us. It's learning from our conversations with it. And as women, we're influencing AI. So yes, you don't want to put personal information in there and you want to be careful about what you're feeding it. But when you do turn the learning off, it turns the learning off completely that's coming from you. And there is opportunity for you to influence AI in a positive way. So that's the other thing. But that also reminds us that everybody's influencing AI. So we know from bias to everything else is influencing AI, and so making sure that the information we get, that we're very discerning and careful about how we use it and how much we trust it. And the only thing I was going to say is a great example, and this made me think of it when Paige was talking, as I was talking to somebody the other day, is it's good to go check with your organization that they already have AI policies in place, or what are their AI policies. A lot of organizations and companies don't have those in place, and it's hard to think about all the different things that can happen, but they had an employee who couldn't speak English. It was a global company, and they were taking company documents, which are confidential, and putting it into AI to translate them. So that he wanted to translate them to be able to give responses back in English. But was putting confidential documents into AI, which are no longer confidential now that they've been put into AI. So there's things like that that people aren't necessarily thinking about, and how they're using AI for work, and employees are using AI for work. And so I think, checking in with your organization, whether you're a leader in your organization or even an employee, knowing what your policies are, if they are any, around AI and its usage.
Awesome. We want to give you all some practical tips. So I'm going to ask each of our speakers to share their best tip with you. Or if you have more than one, I mean, I know it's hard. But Eva, I'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah, so I would share one practical tip that would be situationally aware. So when traveling, attempt to blend in where possible. Plan transportation in advance before traveling. Avoid walking alone at night, especially in unfamiliar areas, and stay connected with others, family members, friends, and trust your instinct. That would be, for me, the being situationally aware. As you know, like traveling to destinations with heightened safety concerns for women, travelers may face unwanted attention. There can be catcalling, stalking, physical harassment, and we can sometimes misinterpret some friendly gestures, like smiling or engaging in small talk. So there are some regions in the world where it can be challenging due to local laws or cultural and religious practices. These can restrict what women can wear or how they can behave in public. You don't even need to go as far as North Africa or Middle East for this. So in my day-to-day life in Mexico City, I do wear differently when I use public transportation than when I take a taxi or an Uber. There is like these small things that you can do to improve your safety and avoid these situations of possible harm. That's about it. So what can we do to reduce these risks? It's essential to research local customs and also be mindful of cultural norms around social interactions.
Great. Thank you so much. Paige.
I am going to, just from a social media standpoint, easy thing you can do is you make your profile private versus public. Go in, look at your friends, make sure that they're actually your friends. Just do a quick, not even quick, just really give a hard look at your social media. That's called user-generated content. Fraudsters love user-generated content because you've put it out there. You're yourself. So by doing an inventory of that and changing that setting, you can really reduce what is out there, the photos that are available, etc.
I think that's a great tip, actually. Tracey.
Well, I've always said, the number one tip is to follow your intuition from the time I was a young police officer until today, in my older age. And I won't tell anybody how old I am, but you can guess.
We love age.
So I know I love middle age. I just love menopause. It's like the best. I tell you
The
what.
best.
But I think what I would add to that in today's age is that my tip is share this information with somebody else. When you get off of this webinar, go share. You just learned, what we just learned a great tip from Paige. We've been providing tips, rideshare tips, things about AI. But what I found is that we have to share that information, and we can't be dependent on AI or companies or anyone else to share that information the way it should be shared. But just doing our part and sharing with one other person when you get off of this and say, hey, I learned a new tip today. I just want to share it. Share it with your network, share it with one person. And the more we share it, the more it gets out there. And that's truth, right? We have a lot of misinformation out there. There's a whole lot of truth on this webinar. Take that truth and share that truth with someone else.
I love that. And also this idea of, us looking after each other and helping each other. And, if we see one of our sisters, doing something, just go help, go suggest. I mean, I think it's so important for us to, not just to be kind to each other, which is really important to me, but also just kind of looking out for each other. And there are so many women now that are starting to travel solo, maybe for the first time. And there are many women on this call. I mean, JourneyWoman is 31 years old that have been with JourneyWoman since the beginning, who have so much wisdom to share. So I hope you all continue to do that, because I think this is how we learn. I mean, when you think about it, safety, as we've discussed on this call, it's not a new topic. It's that everything around us is shifting. So we need to keep talking about it. And I feel sometimes like the world has assumed women are safe when we're traveling. And what we're saying on this call is it's changed. And we need to be really informed and really aware. So that's been our goal with this webinar, is to really help you think a little bit about all these changes and the effect of technology in particular on our safety. I know we have a lot of questions. I would like to take some time to answer those questions, and I'm going to work through the chat a little bit and see if we can get it through a few of them in the next couple minutes. If you have a question that we haven't talked about specifically, please do add it in, and we will do our best. And if you can't stay any longer, I want to thank you for coming. And as Tracey said, please do share this. It's going to be on our YouTube, on our website. But let me just run through some of these questions. So, okay, here's one. Is WhatsApp safer to communicate on than social media?
That before or after Meta bought it? Not a funny joke. No, it is deemed to be an encrypted way of communicating. So is it safe? It's safer than just regular text message. If I were to just text any of you that is not encrypted, essentially make that anything you text is just look over somebody's shoulder and you would be able to read everything that they would say, treat it like that. So encrypted ways like WhatsApp, Signal. I use Signal for a couple of the boards that I'm on and have to have encrypted communication. But just know WhatsApp attracts a lot of scammers, meaning they'll do these Bitcoin messages and they'll try to get you to WhatsApp to communicate because you can use it across the globe and there's not limited communication. And my iMessages might not work if I'm in Europe. So WhatsApp does. And so I'm not saying that WhatsApp is fraudulent, but a lot of fraudsters use WhatsApp. So just be aware if you get some weird messages, just block and delete those.
And all I'll add just really quickly to what Paige said is, you hear those questions all the time, like, is this rideshare better than the other rideshare? Is this dating app safer than this dating app? Is this platform safer than, and I say use the same precautions on all of them. They all have an element of unsafety as we would define it. So just take the same precautions. And yes, there are some that have better features than others, but there's always an element of unsafety. There's fraudulent behavior on all of them. Just be aware of that.
Thank you. There's a question here about using hotel Wi-Fi. And I would kind of extend that to airport Wi-Fi or other free Wi-Fi's. What's the advice on using a public Wi-Fi? Is having a password protected system enough, or should we not use it at all and use an eSIM or that kind of thing?
So I commented some all-inclusive, it's not an all-inclusive list, it's just trusted VPNs on that particular question. I treat public Wi-Fi like somebody's looking over my shoulder. I would never go to a website that requires a username and password on public Wi-Fi. So what I generally do when I'm traveling is I will use a hotspot. If for instance, I've been traveling quite a bit, so I get the notification from my provider that says I basically have no more data. So I then jumped on public Wi-Fi, but then I toggled on my VPN. A VPN is what's called a virtual private network, and it encrypts all of the communications. So when I'm on the public Wi-Fi, but I have my VPN enabled, and I then go to my banking website, they don't know I'm going to that banking website. So it is important that you are using that when you are on public Wi-Fi.
I'm just reading through notes here. If anyone has a new question, please do put it in. There is a question from our YouTube. How big is a risk is kidnapping for ransom? And maybe that's best for Eva to talk about. Is that still a risk you're seeing happening in the world?
Yes, it's a risk depending on the region. So region or country, there are different sort of risks. I would say kidnapping risk, it's still higher in some parts of Central America, South America, some countries in Africa as well. We've seen an increase in kidnappings for ransom or for political reasons or for other reasons, for example, in Mozambique lately. Yeah, so it's a risk depending on the destination. Yeah, and there are these sort of very short-term kidnappings that do happen in many countries in Latin America, for example. So you might be taking cash from an ATM machine, and then you are kidnapped, or you're kidnapped to take the money and give the money away immediately. So that is something that is actually more common than a longer-term kidnapping for ransom.
Right, thank you. There's a question about RFID blocking wallets, all those materials that exist. Paige, I know we've talked about this before. Do you think they're effective or needed?
They are if your cards have RFID on them. And you'll usually know that. It looks like a little Wi-Fi signal. It's 3 or 4 little lines. I've been in many circumstances where somebody has an RFID wallet, but no cards at all that have RFID in them. Your passport will, the newer driver's licenses, they do. A lot of the cards, if you tap to pay, will have RFID. Here's the tricky thing is there's not a lot of actual reports saying that people were victimized because somebody stole their card information because of RFID. But it's one of those where you lock your door, even though there isn't crime in your neighborhood. You lock your car door, even though you're just stepping away to go drop something off in the mail. So why not? So on my when I travel, I do have a little RFID blocking wallet thing that I put it in. So if in case there was some sort of crime, then great. I'm protected. Better safe than sorry. But don't spend $50 on some crazy RFID wallet. You could use tinfoil.
I was just gonna say, that's what you told me, use tinfoil.
Unless of course an RFID Shield company is a sponsor of this, then yes, buy the purse.
Yeah. No. So you're
okay,
good.
then use the tinfoil.
There's a question on carrying copies of all of your documents, including visas and passports. This is in our luggage and on our person. Is that a good idea?
I would say yes. So we do recommend people to have copies of their important documents with them. And actually, in some countries, you are needed to carry ID on yourself all the time. So in those cases, maybe you can use a copy that you carry with you. You have an electronic copy on your phone as well, to be able to show any authorities that might ask for an ID.
I agree with Eva. In some places, now I don't know outside the United States, but in the United States, you can get copies of your driver's license. Like in Arizona, we can get a copy for like what, $10 or $15. So I have 2 copies of my driver's license, and I keep one copy in my suitcase, and I keep one on my person. So you can get unmuted. I do believe that there are areas where you can't get copies, and do it. It's worth it to have it. You don't want to, if you get it stolen or it's lost, then everybody knows how difficult that is, especially out of country.
Yeah, I would just make sure that you have an inventory, what documents you have. So in the event even your documents were lost or stolen, that you would know, like, okay, it was my driver's license, and then you would understand that you'd then have to work specifically to alert your state's DMV of that stolen document.
Yeah.
There was a question on VPNs, and I know that's sometimes a complicated discussion. We know what a VPN is, but sometimes installing it, choosing the right one, we do have an article on our site about VPNs, but Paige, could you give a really quick overview on what a VPN is and does?
Yes, and then I would encourage anybody who has questions about VPNs. I made a comment in the chat that gives you it's not an all-inclusive list, but it does give you some trusted VPNs that you could look into. It's super easy. Actually, I installed one. I use Malwarebytes, and when I am on public Wi-Fi, when I've installed it, just like you would install any software, you go to the company's website, you select your product, and then it'll give you instructions on how to download. It downloads specifically on your device, and then when I go to use it, it's in the top of my bar with your other icons like your Wi-Fi and your battery life. And it gives me the option to turn on or turn off. That's probably the most simplified way to talk about it. But I know that article that is on the website, the JourneyWoman website, goes into more detail.
Great. There is a question on privacy screens, which is another tip I learned from you, Paige.
You mean this right here? Right here? Yes, privacy screens are necessary. You don't want anybody just being able to look over your shoulder if you're trying to get some work done on the airplane or in a public environment. This is a privacy screen. I bought it on Amazon. I selected my model of my device, cost about $10, had it in 2 days. It's great. All it does is it clicks right on, and now I can see directly what's going on, but anybody to my left or my right or farther away is not going to be able to see that. I usually don't have it on if I'm in my house just because it does make it a little bit darker, but this is easy. That's how easy it was to put on and put off. So it's a easy peasy thing to do.
And similarly on cell phones,
Yes.
I have one as well on my cell phone, and in the store, if you go on and you get a glass cover, a protective cover, they're actually combined now, so you can just have them put right on for you. It's very easy. Okay, I think we're coming to the end of our questions, but I do want to encourage, if we didn't get to a question that you have, please do send it in to me at editor@journeywoman.com. And we will be sending out information, articles, tips, and some additional information to everyone who attended, so that you can make sure you're up to speed. And if this is valuable, please do give us some feedback. We would love to hear from you if you found this helpful. And again, the intent is to empower you and to just help you be aware of what's happening and the effect of technology on all of our lives. And I really want to thank our speakers, Tracey, Paige, Eva. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. I can't imagine a better trio to have here. So thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good and
you.
safe day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.